make sure that you're eating enough protein.
Oh.
Really,
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
like aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And it
Wow.
seems like a lot and it might be a full-time job, but that's like a great place to start as far as like feeling good in your body.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. It is a great pleasure to have Anna Sitkoff on the show today, telling us about naturopathic medicine and specifically medicinal mushrooms. And Anna, I was reflecting on, I had my Rise mushroom coffee this morning, as I do every day. It's replaced my coffee habit and gives me a lot of energy. And I just feel really great when I start my day that way. And I'm really excited to dive deeper into this whole world of medicine and how we can really heal ourselves using nature instead of just using, all the drugs that are compounded in labs.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk to you about that.
yeah, well, let's talk about how you chose this as your path.
Yeah, it was all very, very linear, really, since I was a young kid. So I grew up with two parents who had chronic illness. My dad had chronic lymphocytic leukemia. My mom had and has chronic Lyme disease. And they were always, in addition to their allopathic doctors, so their MDs, they were also seeing naturopathic doctors, homeopaths, acupuncturists, Chinese medical doctors. Just they were really getting their care from everywhere. And I saw how much that benefited them because it wasn't just this like physical healing, but also focusing on other kind of spiritual, emotional, which is such an important piece of physical healing because turns out we're not a brain and a body. We're just like one body mind situation. So, yeah, seeing them do that, I was always very interested and it was familiar to me. And my first passion was nutrition. And I really saw myself not as a doctor, but being a nutritionist and helping people heal with diet. It's like we don't have control over a lot in our lives, but we definitely have control over what we put into our body. And so that passion took me to my undergrad at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, and I studied nutrition sciences. And while I was there, I met an amazing herbalist who I ended up apprenticing with. And I had worked at a health food store when I was in high school. I knew about herbal medicine, but my mind hadn't really like completely opened to it. And after meeting this herbalist, I just felt like, oh, wow, like this is what I want. It's like nutrition and herbalism are so similar. And so while I was studying nutrition, I was also doing this apprenticeship with this herbalist. And then during that time, I would sometimes go with my dad to his doctor's appointments, and he was getting care at Osher in addition to UCSF. And Osher is like a integrative medical center. And he was seeing a Chinese medical doctor there who was in communication with his oncologists
Nice.
at UCSF, which was awesome and rare. And she prescribed a mushroom formula. And in my nutrition studies and in my herbal medicine studies up to that point, mushrooms seem to be kind of just like not talked about. I mean, there's like a very long history of what I call like mycophobia in the United States. It's like people are not familiar with mushrooms. They're afraid of mushrooms. They're not kind of a regular part of the general American diet. So anyway, so even with that, after the herbalist or the Chinese medical doctor recommended that for my dad, I just got really interested. And I was like, well, I want to know more about mushrooms. And I moved to Washington State, which is like the mushroom heaven, really. It's like everywhere you look, there's a mushroom. You can't walk more than 5 feet without seeing a mushroom on the sidewalk. And when I first moved here, I was working at an apothecary that is amazing, herbal medicine focused for sure. And I was also doing these like botanical wildcrafting courses and apprenticeships, and really was just like my whole life. And with that, there was still this huge hole in mushrooms. I was like, why is nobody talking about mushrooms? Like, I want to learn more. And who do I learn from? So I really took it upon myself to dive in on multiple levels. It's like I was already familiar with wildcrafting plants. And so I got really familiar with the medicinal mushrooms that grew in the Pacific Northwest. And I would go out and harvest them and make medicine with them and experiment with different extraction methods. And then I decided to start teaching classes about them because it's like the best way to learn about something is to teach about it. It's like it's this forced learning. And so I started teaching this class, Medicinal Mushrooms of the Pacific Northwest, which just helped open my mind even further and get me even more interested. And eventually I went to naturopathic medical school, where I had the opportunity to do laboratory research on medicinal mushrooms. And at Bastyr, where I went to school, we had just like a vat of different kinds of cancer cells in the lab. And I had an amazing mentor who said, you know, Anna, you can choose any mushroom you want and any cancer cells you want. And we'll look at how that mushroom impacts the immune system and anti-cancer mechanisms. And so I chose this mushroom called the rosy polypore, which grows around here, and the same kind of cancer cells that my dad ended up dying from, his lymphocytic leukemia. But it felt really special, and it felt like an important part of my grieving process as well. And so I got that laboratory research, and I was still teaching classes. And then finally, when I got into clinic, I got to actually like start prescribing them and using them and see how they could help people. And what I noticed was that a lot of the clinicians at the clinic where I was a student at, they weren't really totally sure how to prescribe mushrooms. They weren't sure which brands to use. They weren't sure like which form to use, what dose to use. And they ended up asking me a lot of the time, like, what kind of mushroom should I use for this patient? How should I dose it? And I think that really seeing the lack of products that were available that were actually like high quality at that time really drove me to want to start a medicinal mushroom supplement company. And I had a very supportive, at that time, boyfriend who's now my husband, but he was like, yeah, let's do it. And yeah, and so now here I am. I have a private medical practice. I'm a naturopathic doctor, primary care, and we have a medicinal mushroom supplement company. And it all feels like everything in my life has been leading me to this very moment.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like that. And that's really amazing when you can see that you didn't necessarily know what you were going to do or where this was going to lead you.
Yeah.
But it's all in alignment.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I'm like, if my 10-year-old self saw me now, she'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
I want to ask a little bit more about the science behind what mushrooms work for what conditions, because, you know, every few years there's a new trendy food. So whether it's algae or collagen or kale, you know, and on and on and on and on. And I feel like mushrooms has been something a little bit different, the way it's marketed. I don't think it's a fad. Obviously, you know it's not a fad from your research. But to your point, there are a lot of different products and people espousing different brands. So how do you know, so I guess part one is the different modalities, different mushrooms that work for different types of things and the results you've seen. And then how do we know which brands to trust? And obviously that's why you created your own brand.
I have some bias there on which brands to trust, but I can give like general guidance on what to look
of course.
Of course. Yeah. So we can just kind of dive into the mushrooms first and kind of what I typically use them for in my practice and what they're effective for, because I think, it's like they're not a fad, and there has definitely been a huge mush boom. Like, 10 years ago, when I was first getting into this, like there were not nearly as many mushroom brands that existed. There were not nearly as many people interested or using mushrooms as there are today. So there's definitely been, an uprising for sure of the mushrooms. Yeah, so I like to usually just kind of start out with the basics. So I am a scientist and a doctor, and I really like to think about mushrooms kind of starting with like, what is the chemical makeup and how does that interact with our physiology? So I can explain that in the most basic terms as possible for your audience. So we'll just start with the mushroom cell wall. And so when I talk about this, you can kind of assume that this is going to be true for all medicinal mushrooms as far as the medicinal benefits of the mushroom cell wall, because all mushrooms have the same cell wall. There's two main components. Well, actually, there's a few, but the two main ones to discuss would be the beta-glucans, which a lot of people have heard of. And that's usually what a lot of products are standardized to. So you'll see on a mushroom label, it'll say like 500 milligrams of reishi standardized to like more than 25% beta-glucan. So that means that that product has been tested and it has at least 25% of this active compound that we want.
Nice.
And so why do we want that? Well, so beta-glucans are basically like polysaccharides. They're long sugar molecules. And once you ingest those, they interact with the immune system in your gut and they stimulate an immune response that is our main anti-cancer, antiviral mechanism. So they increase natural killer cells, they increase cytotoxic T cells, these cells that you generally want more of in your system to make you stronger, more resilient to illness. So that's kind of like one aspect. So you can assume that even just like eating any mushroom, you're getting these beta-glucans and there's going to be some kind of immune support there. And then those beta-glucans also, as they continue down your digestive system into the large intestine, they act as prebiotics. And so what that means is that they're feeding your good gut bacteria. So you have like probiotic foods like fermented foods or probiotics that people, you could take it in a capsule, bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. And then you need to feed those bacteria so that they proliferate and grow and then produce something called postbiotics that is like short-chain fatty acids that's basically like food for your intestine cells. So the more prebiotics you have, the more of those beta-glucans, those polysaccharides that you can get from mushrooms, even just eating mushrooms, the healthier your gut will be, the more diverse your gut microbiome will be, and the healthier your colon cells will be. So that's something that you can assume to be true if you are consuming mushrooms in a way that those beta-glucans are actually bioavailable. So you're not going to get as much of that beta-glucan medicine if you're just like eating raw mushrooms.
Okay.
More of that will be available if you are cooking the mushroom or if you are using some kind of powdered extract, which we'll get into when we talk about like what to actually look for.
Yeah.
When you're looking for a good brand and a good product. So that's the beta-glucan aspect, and that's true for all mushrooms. The other kind of main medicinal components that we're looking at are going to be like triterpenes, and those are going to have more of an immune modulating, kind of more antihistamine, so good for allergies, side of things. And mushrooms like reishi mushroom are going to be highest in those. And then there's some other compounds, specifically something called ergothioneine, that is high. It's present in most mushrooms, and it is highest in mushrooms like shiitake, lion's mane, and oyster mushroom. And that acts as a very strong antioxidant, and it can cross the blood-brain barrier really easily. So let's get into the individual mushrooms, and then I can kind of say like which ones, because some are like higher in certain compounds, some are higher in others. So let's start with reishi mushroom, because reishi is like the king of all mushrooms and the mushroom of immortality and a mushroom that has been used for thousands and thousands of years. So reishi mushroom is kind of different than some of the mushrooms that you find in the grocery store, like with the gills on the bottom. It's actually it's a polypore. So the pore surface is just really smooth, kind of like skin. And it's pretty woody. And so people you can't really eat reishi. It's usually used or like boiled into a tea, or you can make something called a dual extract, where it's like an alcohol water extract or a powdered extract, but it's not one that you would generally consume with a meal. But reishi is kind of the main mushroom that I think of for nervous system support. So it has a quality that in Chinese medicine, they say that it really nourishes and soothes the shen or the heart spirit. So I use this mushroom so often for people who are experiencing any kind of grief, who have a lot of anxiety, or who just have kind of an unsettled nervous system. And reishi can be really helpful for sleep, but it can also be helpful for energy earlier in the day. So a lot of mushrooms have this amphoteric effect or this like kind of dual action. So it's like if you take a drug, it's unlikely to be able to like help with energy, but also help you sleep at the same
Right.
time.
Yeah.
That's really this. Yeah. And so mushrooms and a lot of plants are like this too, but reishi is a good example of something that like you can take it earlier in the day and it can help to increase morning cortisol levels, which we want. And then if you take it at night or later in the day, it can also just like help you to feel calm and have a restful night's sleep. So reishi is my main kind of mushroom that I use in that regard. It's also considered an adaptogen. So it just like helps your body adapt to the stress response or like lessen the stress response when you're subjected to chronic stress. Yeah. And then reishi has some other actions that a lot of people aren't as familiar with, where it can actually be really helpful for hormone health. So it can help to lower a hormone called dihydrotestosterone, which is like a more potent form of testosterone. And in people who have PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome, where you're trying to decrease testosterone levels, reishi can be helpful there. Or in older men who have like enlarged prostates due to too much dihydrotestosterone, reishi can be really helpful there. Reishi is also really supportive for kidney function, so it can help to normalize kidney function levels and be used in chronic kidney disease. And so I know. This is like, you want to talk about like what mushrooms do for the body. It's like, this is going to be a long conversation, but we'll see how many mushrooms we can get through. But yeah, reishi is really, really amazing on so many levels for a lot of different body systems. And then reishi is also really high in these triterpenes called ganoduric acids that can be helpful for lowering histamine levels, helping with an allergic response. And so often use them for patients who have like chronic allergies. And so often there's like, it's like anxiety and allergy and hormone imbalance. Like they all go together a lot of the time. And so
This is my hand.
it can be a really good ally there. Yeah. And then let's get into some other mushrooms that people might be familiar with, and can talk about reishi forever, but we'll move along. So turkey tail mushroom is, maybe, have you heard of turkey tail before? Yeah. And so it's really beautiful. It's like many, many colors, and it's also a polypore mushroom similar to reishi. And so you wouldn't really eat this mushroom. It would need to be boiled or made into some kind of extract. Turkey tail has been used for quite a long time for breast cancer, in addition to the like kind of normal chemotherapeutics and hormone modulators that are used. And there's a few compounds that have been patented actually from the turkey tail mycelium, that there's a drug called Crestin that's used in breast cancer treatment in Japan like pretty regularly. Like it's a very normal thing. You won't be able to find it here. Like you even have your rise.
Oh, we didn't even realize that. That was not intentional.
Yeah. And so yeah, turkey tail is one that like for any of my cancer patients and anyone who has like a low white blood cell count, who is really trying to increase their immune response and a kind of their good immune response. Inflammation is another immune response that we don't necessarily want to be increasing. But mushrooms, in the way that they stimulate the immune response, they're also increasing more like anti-inflammatory cytokines and T regulatory cells. And so they help to dampen the inflammatory response. But so yeah, turkey tail is kind of the main one I think about for very specific immune health, in addition to kind of gut health. So turkey tail does not have those triterpenes that I mentioned earlier with reishi. It's really, really high in polysaccharides, though. And so it's going to have all of those gut healing properties that I discussed earlier. And so if there is gut imbalance, if somebody's been on antibiotics for a long time or had any kind of gut disruption from like traveler's diarrhea or even like food poisoning, something like that, turkey tail would be a helpful kind of healing long-term thing after that to kind of reset the gut microbiome.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things for us to look for. And what about using them in the different formulas, right? So there are, there's mushroom coffee, tea, overnight oats made that have mushrooms in them.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about Lucidum medicinals, what you are there and how you formulate it all,
Okay, great. Yeah. There's not enough time to get into every single mushroom.
No.
Yeah. So the conversation around what form of mushroom to use or what form of the fungus to use is a complex conversation, and you're going to get a lot of different answers from different people. And my answer is that for the most part, you want to be using the mushroom. So if you see the label of the product you're using, if it says mycelium or myceliated grain, you really want to choose something else that says mushroom or fruiting body. Mycelium is like the root system of the fungal organism. It's the below ground portion that you don't see usually with your naked eye, or sometimes it's the portion that's like within the tree trunk. And modern day with mushroom cultivation, people are cultivating the mycelium on grain. It consumes the grain. And before it fruits into a fruiting body, that myceliated grain, which is basically like tempeh, that's what ends up being processed and then sold as mushroom. But really, it's myceliated grain. There's been a lot of pushback against this. Companies are now getting better about saying, like, this is mycelium, this is not mushroom.
Got it.
So that's kind of like the first thing to be aware of when you're using a mushroom product. If you have like your mushroom overnight oats or mushroom coffee or whatever it is, you want it to just say mushroom. Ideally, it would also say powdered extract. If it says powdered extract, then that means it's gone through some kind of heating process. And so those medicinal compounds, those beta-glucans and triterpenes and ergothioneine, and all of that will be more easily bioavailable, and you're going to be able to absorb those better into your system. So the more processed it is, the better, basically.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because usually you would think the opposite.
I know. With mushroom, more processed, the better. And something else to pay attention to is like, are you even getting a medicinal dose in those functional foods that have the mushrooms?
Right.
It's like, to get those benefits that I mentioned from reishi, you want to be getting at least 2 grams of powdered extract per day. And if it's just like part of this mixture in oats or coffee, it's like you'll be lucky, I think, if there's even like 100 milligrams a lot of the time, especially if there's like a bunch of different herbs in there and a bunch of other mushrooms.
Yeah.
So kind of paying attention to see if it says the actual amount of the mushroom that's in the product and looking for, I'd say between 1 and 3 grams for most mushrooms would be best.
Yeah. I think that's really helpful because you hear, of course, you just, in the news or articles or friends tell you about these different products and you take their word for it, or you take the headline as gospel, but you don't necessarily know if you're getting the true nutrients that you need. So that was really helpful. I want to talk now about your brand. And you said that you're doing this business with your now husband.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a lot of your first clients, the first people you're working with, were people that were in your, in the system. They already were bought in. So how have you been able to expand your brand beyond that, into this digital world, finding new clients for both your medicinal business, but also for your business as a doctor?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey because initially what we thought was that we just wanted these mushrooms to be available for doctors to have in their
Ah,
dispensaries. We thought that that was going to be like the best way to get in.
hmm.
And it turns out that, and I'm like this too, it's like I ignore any email that somebody sends me about a new supplement. Like I just, like the doctors are so busy. And a lot of doctors don't have dispensaries anymore. It's like everyone is like buying online or they have an online dispensary. And so we soon realized that after trying to be direct to doctor for a while, that that was not the best way. And so we switched over to direct to consumer. And I think that the most helpful thing has really been through educating people on platforms like podcasts. Like, this is kind of the main goal. It's like the more people who know that I exist
Hmm.
and who feel inspired by mushrooms by hearing me talk about them, the more likely they are to want to try our product and have trust in our product. And so that's really been kind of the main transition, and that has been generally working well, but is also like a whole process.
Right.
And like trying to be more active on Instagram, which is like its own whole
Yeah.
thing that, you know, standing out amongst all of the other mushroom companies
Yeah.
is its own challenge, but I think we have the benefit that we're the only mushroom business that's actually created by a doctor. It's like I created these formulas, I use them in my practice. I trust them. I know that they work. I see them work. I see people get better. I see their lab values change. And that I think is like what makes us so special and different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then by coming on podcasts, doing interviews or giving talks, you're showing all of your credentials, your expertise, your case studies that prove the transparency that you have behind your brand, the authenticity, which is what everybody's looking for right now, right? Ethical marketing, ethical brands, ones that we can really trust that what they're telling us is exactly what we're going to get. And I think that doesn't happen all the time. There's a lot of deception in products. And so the fact that you can, I mean, this is something you've been passionate about for a long time, and that shines through. And so it makes, I mean, I know if I were just listening to this right now, I would feel much more at ease and connected to the story and to the product.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and that's the goal for
Yeah.
sure. And I think like with that mush boom that has happened,
Mm.
there's been a lot more companies that are like, well, like mushrooms are kind of a quick way to make money, or we'll just like put some mushrooms in this protein bar because if we say there's mushrooms in it, it'll sell better. And those quality concerns that I
Yeah.
discussed earlier of like, well, are they even mushrooms that you're putting in there? Is
Right.
this just like a powdered mycelium situation?
Mm.
Like, why did you, yeah, just like the background of like why you're doing something and like what's driving you is so important. And yeah, I think what's been driving me this whole time is really just like this passion for natural medicine and for mushrooms. Yeah.
How hard was it to set up your business? Did you have to get outside funding? You know, what were some of the considerations behind the name of your business
Hmm.
and who you work with and saying yes to working with your, you know, the person that you see every day at home when you wake
Yeah.
up, when you go to bed, and then now all day as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah. So I had a great resource for the mushroom extracts themselves before we started the business. I'm really good friends with Jeff Chilton, who owns Namex, North American Mushroom
Ah,
Extracts, and they're like one of the biggest North American mushroom extract suppliers. And they're up in Canada. And so I knew that I had this relationship already. And so I knew where I was getting my mushrooms from. And so I had some optimism there, maybe too much optimism. Because I was like, okay, well, I know where we're getting the mushrooms from. So, like, how hard could this all be? And then it was also, we started really during COVID. And we're
yeah.
like, well, if we can build a business during COVID that works, then it can get through anything.
Mhm.
and it still exists. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we did get some funding, mostly just from family members. So some family loans. And otherwise, it's all been self-funded and really built on that relationship that I already had with Jeff and with Namex, and then relationships that we already had with different practitioners or different there are some other like apothecaries who started selling the mushrooms, but that all felt really helpful at first, even though that isn't ultimately like where we're selling our mushrooms. It felt good to know that like there was a place that was going to sell them eventually. Yeah. And so doing that with my husband and our friend Mikhail is kind of our other business partner, and he's wonderful. And he had a history of owning a kombucha company, and so had some more experience kind of on the just business side of things, of like having a natural products business. And yeah, it's been challenging in some ways where it's like, it's nice to be able to come home and not have to think about business or talk about it. And it's like, we'll be kind of in bed at the end of the day, and then Matt or myself, like, we'll think of something with the business and then we'll bring it up. And it's like, this is like, I really don't want to be talking about this right now, but now we're talking about it because this is just like a part of us. And that like work-life balance is kind of, it's just not differentiated. It's so integrated into our into our life, where it's like we'll be talking about the groceries, and then next thing you know, because he's also a naturopathic doctor, we'll be talking about medicine, and then we'll be talking about mushroom orders, and it's most of the time it's okay. And then also it's like, it would be nice if that wasn't a part of the relationship. And then I think too, something else that has been challenging and something important for I think people to think about generally is like building a business on something that you're so passionate about, and like what that does to the passion and how to keep that passion alive, which has been this difficult journey for me, because I love the mushrooms, and I used to be the one like making the medicine with the mushrooms and harvesting them and doing these different extraction methods, and I just like don't have the time for that, and doing it at the scale that we need for our product is just like impossible for me. And so like making sure that I have some time each week where I'm just like going on a walk in the forest and like still like having some kind of relationship with the wild mushrooms and like touching them, because owning a supplement company, it's the like it feels very disconnected at times. And so I think part of holding on to that passion too is doing things like podcasts and teaching and talking to people, and seeing people kind of sometimes look at me with a blank stare as I talk about mushroom constituents, but also being like excited and in awe. And I feel like if I can get people to feel excited about things like mushrooms, then like my work is done.
Yeah. So that makes a lot of sense. But since you did start during the pandemic, and the company that you work with, that's the biggest supplier, is in Canada, I have to ask, because there's a lot of supply chain disruption during the pandemic. So even though you know your source and it's not too far away, you also have to have the bottles, right? And all of the labels, all of those parts. And
Oh, yeah.
And, I'm sure you're not shipping them from your home or your warehouse. So you have to have somebody who's also doing the order fulfillment.
Well, actually, we're doing the fulfillment.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But we have, a contract manufacturer that's doing all of the encapsulation and the bottling and the labeling and all of that.
Yes.
So,
nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was hard. It was hard to find a contract manufacturer at that time. It was hard to, I think that at some point it's like we had the bottle shape and size and color that we wanted, but there was a supply chain issue with the caps. Wow. And so it's like the different pieces of the bottle.
Like, we think everything all just come together.
Yeah, everything took so much longer than I think any of us could have imagined. And then within that too, there was disruption in all of our lives. It's like my husband and I were in California, and then our partner, Mikhail, was here in Washington. And then in that time, it's like I've been pregnant, I've had a baby, I've like there's so many like life disruptions that happen in addition to supply chain disruptions and now tariffs and like how that will impact. It's like all of our
Yeah.
mushrooms are grown in China. The majority of mushrooms in the world are grown in China. So yeah, now we just have a new obstacle to get through and I trust that we'll get through it. But yeah, there's always just like constant learning and definitely if I didn't have this deep obsession with mushrooms, I think that I would have just given up by now.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah. Well, that was the next question I was going to ask is the tariff situation as well. And so it sounds like there are a lot of issues, but it's worth it. You've
it
seen the
feels worth it.
results. Yeah.
Yeah,
You know how
yeah,
this can help people. So
yeah. So far, it still feels worth it.
amazing. So, what is the best way for people to find out more about mushrooms, exploring, ordering them? I know, and you do practice in Washington State and California.
Yeah, just Washington State now,
Oh, okay.
actually. Yeah. Yeah. So people can learn more about mushrooms so I have a blog that kind of goes into the nitty-gritty of a lot of aspects of medicinal mushrooms and different kinds and what they do. And they can find that on my website, drannasitkoff.com. There's also the Fungi Academy, which a lot of people really like. That's another resource. People want to kind of get more into it. And then Lucidum Medicinals is the name of the company. Lucidum is the species of reishi. So reishi's Latin name is Ganoderma lucidum. Lucidum is like light, like lucid.
Nice.
So that's where we got our company name. And so lucidummedicinals.com, people can find our mushrooms there. And then I really do a lot of mushroom education on my Instagram as well. So Dr. Anna Sitkoff on Instagram if people want to kind of nerd out more.
Yeah. Well, we'll have your website linked in the show notes, and I'm on your website, and I signed up to get information about all of your products already.
Oh, great.
Oh,
Great.
yeah. And so I know that we can get a lot of information. If we go to your website, we can go to all the different links. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Is there one piece of advice you would give to somebody who is thinking about, they have a health issue? I mean, I just turned 50, so I'm reaching a whole other set of health concerns as a woman. But anybody who's listening who might think about, oh, maybe this is something that could help me with XYZ health issue. Where should they start? Should they just start by coming on, learning more about the different, mushrooms from your resources?
Yeah, I think that my main advice is like not mushroom related, but this is advice that I give to all of my patients. And I see most people feel so much better. And so I'm just going to like put it out there as a PSA is like, especially during perimenopause and menopause, is like, make sure that you're eating enough protein.
Oh.
Really, though, like aim for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And it
Wow.
seems like a lot and it might be a full-time job, but that's like a great place to start as far as like feeling good in your body. And then if you're looking for a specific mushroom that might help you, yes, like you can go on my website and kind of look through the mushroom monographs and see if anything kind of speaks to you for the specific condition that you have.
Yeah. Fantastic. And I always like to end this podcast with a quote, mantra, family motto, verse, poem, words that continue to inspire you.
Oh, this is a hard one to kind of think of quickly. I mean, this isn't very hopeful, but this is something that me and my family say regularly is like, hope for the best, expect the worst. Seems to work well for us.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll let that sit for a minute. Yeah, but that's really talking about planning and having the optimism to keep on going, but also setting realistic expectations.
Totally. And it's okay if things don't go the way that you want
Yeah.
them to go. And it's like being, I think, like really gentle with yourself if it doesn't go the way you want it to go. And I think that's actually something that has like kept my relationship with my husband strong through having this business together and having our new family, and all of this is like our expectations for everything are like pretty low. It's like it's like we want things to, yeah, I think that it just makes it so that we're not ever like disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, this has been really fun. And this, is a little bit different conversation, but I do like to have people on to talk about different modalities that will help us all as humans in our work and in our personal lives. Like just find that balance and find things that will help us get through every day, things that will help improve our health. So thank you for being here and talking about your passion behind mushrooms, creating your business, your brand, and what we all should be thinking about.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And thank you to everybody who's listening. Leave us a rating or review or both on your favorite platform. If you like this podcast, it helps discoverability. I am Annika Jackson, and I'll be back again with another amazing guest very shortly. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.